Business Weekly, brought to you by National Social Security Fund. NSSF, we secure your future.
On this edition of KTN Business Weekly, we look at the effects of the next general election and business confidence in the country. We also pitch camp at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission for the Executive Wing to find out where we are in terms of preparations for the elections. Remember that you can send in your questions, observations or comments to the SMS number 8041 or email address ktnbizweekly@standardmedia.co.ke. Good evening and welcome to this edition of KTN Business Weekly. I'm Michael Oyer. Every 5 years, Kenya goes to the polls, and under 6 months, the country returns to the ballot, this time, the first time, under the new constitution. However, business confidence remains hinged on the successful preparation and handling of the election. Tonight, we find out from the business community what they think of the general elections and whether or not they believe or have confidence in the way the process has begun so far.
Every 5 years, Kenya goes to the polls. Since independence in 1963, the elections have been crucial in determining the next set of leaders whose role will be to steer Kenya to prosperity both socially and politically, but more importantly economically. In the years preceding the 1992 general elections, the outcome of the elections were rather predetermined since Kenya was a one-party rule system. However, in 1992, and with the advent of multi-party democracy, the outcome of the elections heralded Kenya into a previously uncharted waters of electioneering violence. Since then, the uncertainty that meets every election cycle has been one that shakes the country's economic and social fabrics. The situation was even more pronounced in the last elections that saw Kenya go to war with itself. Its results saw thousands dying, hundreds of thousands others being displaced, businesses burnt down, business opportunity lost, and investor confidence in the country swept under the carpet. Fast-tracked to 5 years later, and Kenya is once again heading to the polls. In less than 6 months, the country goes for its first elections under the new constitution. An election that is expected to inspire confidence both to the people of Kenya and the business community.
Kenya as a country is ready. I think the people are ready to go for elections. We know there are certain institutions, like the issues of the police, that need to be resolved before the elections. And we do hope that that will be done sooner than later. I know the IEBC is working hard in preparations. I know they've had some challenges, but as you have seen, those challenges are being addressed. And so we do believe that the country is ready for elections. But we also know that there's a lot of work that needs to continue being done, especially where peace is concerned and the issue of security.
Elections are also related to investment, and this is not because there is a big relationship. The relationship is because of the trend that Kenya has already set. After every 5 years, the economy goes up like this, then it starts going down. It's the trend you have set. So it's already in the mindset of Kenyans, because of the issue of being unsure, uncertain, that you don't commit yourself to invest. It's obvious, has been there. But this time around, I think the new constitution has given Kenyans an avenue to address some of those things that were not addressed or that caused the issues of 2008.
An election with a difference, the March 4th polls have been said will be. With an expected 6th position to be voted on, the preparation is currently ongoing. It is this preparation that both local and foreign investors are watching keenly. The build-up to the elections rides highly among investors' concerns, careful not to have a repeat of the 2007-2008 post-election violence.
For us to be able to attract investors, to retain investors, to continue to grow businesses, we cannot ignore security. And we've seen over the last few elections that every time there's been an election, we've had chaos for the last 5 elections. And the magnitude has grown, as we all know, until 2007, 2008. And so the private sector is very aware of what could happen in 2013.
Anybody investing, one would like to invest to work in a secure environment. because a secure environment you can predict. You can even be able to plan properly, and you are secure. So when there is insecurity, do not expect investment. Security and investment have direct correlation. Increased insecurity means reduced investment.
While the body charged with the design, plan and execution of the elections, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, saying that all is well, situations are already arising that might create negative perception. Over the last 3 weeks, the coastal region, a robust investment decision, has been engulfed in violence flames. The killing of Muslim cleric Sheikh Abu Drogo saw Mombasa City erupt, becoming a no-go zone for almost 3 days. Though calm has resumed in the region, fears of violence still linger on. In Tana Delta to the north of Mombasa, over 100 people have so far been butchered and 100 others displaced. This continues to cause concerns and worry among the investing community.
Security is very important, I'm telling you. The effort we are putting in infrastructure today, we should be putting effort in the same way to address the issue of insecurity.
And so it's important that we also look at areas of high investments and then look at them and say, are there hotspots in those areas? And so what do we need to do in terms of security? And again, it boils back to the three arms of government work very closely together in those areas. If you look at the whole Mombasa stream and Tana River, that whole area has a lot of resources. We, as a country, we are discovering a lot of minerals right now. And so we are going to be attracting a lot of investors into these areas, but they will not be able to come if security continues to be a challenge.
While such flares cannot be wished away, the occurrence of the 2007, 2008 and government reaction to the same comes to mind. The role played by the private sector in the previous elections also comes to focus. Although they acknowledge that previously they have stood by, this time round they have put a more proactive approach to the build-up of the elections.
Kenya Daima is basically what we call it's my Kenya campaign, and the initiative began as the private sector started reflecting of the coming elections last year, and we felt that in 2007, 2008, private sector, like many others, was sat back and watched, and no one expected to see what really happened, but also played a role, in the chaos. I mean, we keep saying the trucks that were used to ferry the arrows and all that, they belong to private sector. So everyone was involved in one way or another, in small and big. But also, as a large private sector, I think largely the private sector sat back and watched, and then lost millions. We lost lives, we lost millions of businesses and a lot of money. And so as we go into the next election, the private sector felt, then can we be part of the solution? Can we do something and nothing really goes wrong? Than wait and see and something goes wrong and then we have to come to the very end.
With this in mind, the role that the government also plays becomes focal as the country heads to the next polls. While the new constitution has strived to create credible institutions in the running of the government, a few lapses still send wrong signals to the investing community. This tend to dampen investor appetites for Kenya.
The investment environment in Kenya today is very good, I'm telling you. It's extremely good. First, I said that we have a new constitution, which gives everybody rights and its obligation to society. You see? And all institutions are properly defined, their role and their limitations, their limits, where they cannot exceed what they do. You see? The separation of powers between judiciary, executive, and the legislation, that's parliament, is extremely important, so that each one of us does his work according to what's tailor-made for him, not to interfere with the other one. That one creates a platform for people to provide what they're supposed to provide to that. And that way, the issue of investment environment is addressed.
Although the investments environment from the government perspective looks good, the private sector continues to be a worried lot. In a recent survey carried out by Ipsos Synovate, business leaders in the country says growth in the next 6 months could be slow. While pointing at the rising cases of insecurity in the country as a cause, the leaders also appear appalled by government's handling of the situation that has not been convincing.
For us, it's about peaceful elections, but prosperity for Kenyans thereafter. And so the whole idea of getting people to understand the idea of vision, because Once you have peaceful elections, then what? You have to have a vision of what you're trying to achieve. And so Vision 2030 is key for us. And so that's why they are part of Kenya Daima.
Politics are always there. When you always be there, politics will always be there. Because you see, as I said, leadership is about people electing the people they want them to guide them for 5 years. You see, govern them. And they want to be governed in a particular way, isn't it? So it's something that is permanent. You stay with it because it's part and parcel of what the society needs, good governance.
Time for a break now, but when we return, Ambassador Yusuf Nzibo, a commissioner with the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, is our guest on the executive wing. Stay with KTN Business Weekly. Welcome back. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is the body charged with conducting elections in the country. In less than 6 months, the Commission will be put to test as Kenya goes to the polls on the 4th of March 2013. Tonight, the chairman of the Elections Committee of the IEBC, Ambassador Yusuf Nzibo, sheds light on the planning so far.
Joining us on this week's Executive Wing is Commissioner Ambassador Yusuf Nzibo. Ambassador Nzibo is also the chairman of the Elections Committee at the Commission. Asante sana, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us. To begin with, how are we assured that this election is going to be foolproof?
First of all, we must start with the way the commissioners were appointed. Through a transparent process, we applied for our jobs, and we were vetted by a committee that was appointed by Parliament. Then we were vetted by Parliament. Because the integrity of any electoral system depends on the integrity of the people manning it and integrity of the system. So we want to assure Kenyans that we as commissioners and staff, the Secretariat, are working overnight to ensure that the elections, general elections slated for the 4th of March next year, will be peaceful. They will be free, fair, and transparent. We are also discussing with Foreign Affairs on the issues of the diaspora voting. As you know, the Constitution for the first time gives Kenyans living overseas an opportunity to vote, to be registered, and also to vote.
You have mentioned about engaging cross-section of Kenyans, the political parties, the voters, the clergy. What about the business community? What role are you playing with them in this process?
Yes, we will deal with that. In fact, if you remember during the referendum, we had several forums where we engaged faith-based groups, business communities, the media owners, and in fact, we now have a bi-monthly meeting organized by the Director of Voter Education, Dr. Joel Mabonga, and part of our programs we will now call upon the business community to basically brief them, to get a buy-in also, for them to understand our programs, our state of preparedness, because we believe very strongly that, first of all, we will need everybody to mobilize Kenyans, for Kenyans to understand the need to partake in these historical elections.
Ambassador, the process of planning and executing this election is also important to the foreign investors who are willing and wishing to put in the money in this economy after 2013. What assurance are they having that this election will set the standards?
In fact, we are working very closely with the international community to basically assure people. We are now in the process of procuring biometric voter registration through the assistance of the Canadian government, and those BVR kits should be here for us to begin voter registration by the middle of next month. We are also engaging other stakeholders in peace initiatives, because we have a beautiful country and we don't want to go back to the 2007-2008 debacle where you saw Kenyans maiming each other. There are also issues of accountability. Chapter 6 of the Constitution talks about leadership and integrity. So we'll have a vetting system in which whoever wants to vie for office will have to fulfill certain mandates that we as commissioners did fulfill, including being tax compliant.
Commissioner, we've already seen situations whereby there's violence, areas like Tana River, areas like Wajir, Mandera. How is the Commission involving itself in this to just assure people, both local and investors, that will not be taken advantage of by warring political sides so that this election is bungled up once again?
Look at what is happening in Tana River, look at what is happening in Wajir, what is happening in Mandera. It's basically the issues of leadership and who is going to become a governor, who is going to be a county rep, and the issues where do you, unfortunately, there are issues when we were doing the delimitation of boundaries of communities fighting over territory in terms of we want our own ward, we want our own constituency, and therefore voter education becomes very crucial. That for the process of democracy to be enhanced, that we must act peacefully, we must understand why we need to elect leaders, and that this is not the end of the day. It's like a football match. There has to be a winner and a loser.
Lastly, in terms of the time frame, we've already seen some elements of delay, especially issues to deal with BVR. Are we still certain that we are going to meet the time frames as scheduled by the Commission?
As you know, it was always our intention that we adopt and embrace technology. During the IEC days, we were given that mandate of introducing new technology. The biggest issue is you have to have a credible voter register. Krikla had talked about in 2007 that there were over 1.2 million dead voters. Now, how do we ensure that you have a credible register? It's by using technology, biometrics, in which you come and register. We take your fingerprints, we take your photograph, and the day of election you come there and we ascertain you are the one. As you know, nobody shares fingerprints. So that's why we were very keen on this biometric. And at some point it looked like it was not going to work because of vested interest in terms of those tenders. But now we are back on track. We already decided, as I said, on the colors of ballot papers. There's a team that has come back from London that had looked with their traditional company that does voting papers to try and design these ballot papers on the colors that political parties have approved.
Once again, Commissioner, thanks very much for hosting us and taking us through the basis of the preparedness of the Commission for these elections. We want to assure our supporters, the media, thank you very much. That was Commissioner Ambassador Yusuf Nzibo, the chairman of the Elections Committee at the Commission, taking us through the basis of how prepared they are to ensure that they midwife these elections and assure investors, both local and international, that the elections will truly set the standards in this country.
In the money markets, the Kenya shilling is holding steady to the US dollar, but weakening against other world major currencies. 1 week after the CBK lowered its key lending rate to 13%. To the greenback, the shilling is holding a mean of 84.24, while to the sterling pound, it is trading at 134.82. Against the euro, the home unit is exchanging at 107.55. While closer home, the South African rand is posting a mean of 10.29. That's all we had time for in this edition of KTN Business Weekly. Let's do it again next Wednesday. Remember that you can send in your comments or questions to the email address ktnbizweekly@standardmedia.co.ke or text it to the number 8041. From myself and the entire team, thank you for watching. I'm Michael Oyer. Good night.
Business Weekly, brought to you by National Social Security Fund. NSSF, we secure your future.